Hey, and welcome to this lesson on the chords to It Had to Be You. Everything that you see on the screen is available as a PDF, link in the description. Let's get on with it. So here's my chart on the screen. This is your typical 32 bar swing standard. So we'll run through the chords first and have a think about how the chords are working and some kind of learning points, things you can take forward to other standards too. So this tune's really like A-B form. You got two pairs of 16 bars. That's how I like to think about it anyway. So we start out on G major 7. Working our way to E7, 4 bars of A7, and A7 is going to lead us to D7, because A likes to go to D. I'm going to use this passing diminished there into E minor 7 for a couple of bars, working our way back to A7, leads us back to D. And that's the first half of the tune. The second half of the tune starts out the same as the first half, so G7, major 7, sorry, to E7. And everything's the same up to the end of this line. It's A7 for 4 bars. And then we have C6, 9, to F9, G major 7, D7, E minor 7, 2 bars of D7. G back to chord, G major 7, A minor 7, D7. That takes us through everything. Let me play through the chords once through, close up for you. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's think about the harmony. We've got 1 sharp in that key signature. Let's reference our circle of fifths. 1 sharp means the key of G major, which gives us the following chords: G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, C major 7, D7, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, back to G major 7. So those are the chords in the key of G. And on my chart I've labelled chords in key with blue Roman numerals, and anything out of key is red. And before we go into the analysis, just to explain, this one includes a lot of secondary dominants. So in those list of chords in the key of G, there's only one dominant chord, and that's D7. And dominant chords are so important for the way that songs move to other chords, that often, particularly in jazz standards, there's a lot more dominance than just the one dominant, the D7 in this case, because they set up tension. And they set up this whole idea of tension and release. So you're going to see a lot of dominants in this song which don't belong to the key. They would be referred to as secondary dominants because they're outside of the key and they want to lead us to somewhere. We'll get into that. So we start out on chord 1. A nice stable point that we're going to want to come back to. We then go to chord 6, but as a dominant. So we get E minor 7 in the key of G, not E7. So this is a secondary dominant. I've called it 6-7, or you might see some people call it as I've labelled on there also, the 5 of 2. Why? Because A is the second in the key of G, and that's our next chord. But going back to our chart, we expect A minor 7 in this key. So this is also technically out of key, but they're both common out of key chords to have, if you like. So chord 1, chord 6 is a dominant. E7 is the dominant of A, it leads us there. So we can call this 2-7, so it's the second chord but as a dominant. Or we could call it the 5 of 5 because our next chord's D7, because A7 is the dominant of D7. So I think chord 1, move to E7, E7's the dominant of A, A7's the dominant of D, which is why that flows well. E7 wants to lead to A7, and A7 wants to go to D7, because that's what 5 chords want to do, dominant chords want to do. So the circle of fifths is great for all of this, because if you look at it, you can see E, and then you see next to it A, and then you see next to A, D, they're all linked together. You can see the 5-1 relationship. That's why the circle of fifths is such a useful tool for us. And so that D7 is like the primary dominant, the dominant you expect in the key of G. D7 wants to go to G. But in this instance, we get this passing diminished, which goes to E minor 7. Now, why does this diminished go to E minor 7? Well, diminished are like dominants, and this one is very closely related to B7. You hear that? It's actually like a B7. It contains all the notes of a B7 apart from a B, funnily enough. And it's like a B7 flat 9 sound. Rolls us into this E minor 7 for 2 bars, which is chord 6 as it's meant to be. Pick up A7, 2 as a dominant, and it leads us back to D7 perfectly for us to start again. The next half the tune's the same as the first bit, so we've got chord 1 again, chord 6 is a dominant, E7, chord 2 is a dominant, and this is where the tune takes a different turn. So the last 8 bars of the tune is probably the most interesting because there's a few nice moves in it. Start on a C6-9 chord, this is chord 4. Interesting actually, because you know, chord 4 is quite a common chord in a song, and it's been held back till now. Interesting. Then we move to an out of key chord, F9, or we could play F7. It's like a blues, that, right? Like C, move into F, that's a movement of a fourth. Like you did a blues in C, go C to F. But then this is working really nicely to take us to G major 7. Now, this is a thing called the backdoor dominant, where you get a dominant bass chord and a ninth chord is that, right? It's like a dominant 7th, just got a nicer sound to it maybe. More interesting sound, should I say. A dominant chord, a tone beneath its target, will take you back. So F is a tone beneath G, and it takes you nicely into that G chord. If you haven't heard of the backdoor dominant, I've made a video on that. You might want to check it out. Probably best to look at that in isolation. So it's chord 4, C, to what we call the flat 7-7, which is the backdoor dominant. It's called the flat 7-7 because the 7th chord in the key of G is F sharp minor 7 flat 5, or F sharp half diminished, some people call it. So we call it flat 7 because it's not built off F sharp, it's built off F. That rolls us back to chord 1, G major 7, and then we get B7, which is another dominant out of key, another secondary dominant. B7 likes to go to E. And then we've got E minor 7, chord 6, and then back to chord 5. A couple bars, which leads us nicely back to 1, and then we've just got the basic 2-5 at the end, which would help us start it all again. Unfortunately, the file for the end of my video didn't quite capture properly. So just to wrap up a few things, the final page of the PDF isn't covered in the video, and that's variations to the chord changes. Check that out once you get the basic changes down. Because there's some chords in this where you stay on it for like 4 bars, like the A7 for instance, or the E7's 2 bars, the G's 2 bars. You might want to stick in a couple like passing chords and things. So I've included those on the variations. They're sort of typical things a lot of people would do just to add a bit more sense of movement and interest rather than that stagnant staying on one chord. As ever, you let me know if you've got any questions or comments on today's video. Just Guitar Lessons every Wednesday and Saturday. And be sure to hit that like button. Please consider subscribing if you don't already. And until next time, you take care.